The Eureka Jazz Fest in Ballarat has attracted at least 1,000 trad jazz lovers from throughout Australia, boosting Ballarat's economy to the tune of $250,000. The third annual festival winds up tonight with a fancy dress Mardi Gras, but this jazz celebration will be remembered for its women.
Ballarat's historic Lydiard Street, with its gracious buildings and fine lacework, is reminiscent of New Orleans in the 1920s, the height of trad jazz. So it's a natural location for the third annual Eureka Jazz Fest. But there's more to jazz than New Orleans-style architecture. There's also trad jazz paraphernalia, the foot-tapping, hand-clapping jazz lovers, and of course, the music.
Jazz lovers, in fact, range from maybe 6 years old to about 80. So, and they all wear different things. Some of them do like to be a little bit flamboyant with coloured umbrellas and funny hats and waistcoats and all that sort of stuff. But really, I guess it's just their way of joining in and having fun.
But the jazz ladies are the big hit at this festival.
Treat me right, and I'll stay home every day.
There are very few ladies, as far as historically speaking is concerned, very few ladies took part in traditional jazz. In music in the 20s and 30s, it was really not accepted for women to play, although there were a few all-girl bands. But so it's something that we'd like to encourage in the future.
Lydiard Street's New Orleans flavour will continue tonight with the festival's grand finale, a fancy dress Mardi Gras at the Provincial Hotel.
The future of Australia's rural sector could depend on the results of the 1987-88 agricultural census. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 43,000 Victorian primary producers will be asked to file details of their agriculture activity. The statistical results allow government, primary producer organisations and marketing authorities to adopt policies to improve the primary production economy. Statistics gathered through the agriculture census are also used in planning and developing extension services, emergency and relief networks, internal and external trade. The recent balance of payment figures reflect an increasing need to improve the value of our exports. That's the warning from Primary Industry Minister John Kerrin, who says even though the figures were saved by Australia's ongoing wool boom, more needs to be done. If it wasn't for the large amount of wool exported, the balance of payment figures could have been a disaster. That's how Primary Industry Minister John Kerrin reads the figures, in which he says wool exports compensated for the increase in imports. But he says this dependence on the commodities, including wool, is causing concern. Commodities tend to move in boom and bust cycles. Wool is at the peak of a boom at the moment, but it or other key commodities may not be going so well at crucial times in the future.
The reality is that commodities are 80 to 84% of Australia's trade in tradable goods, and that position is going to prevail for a long, long time. But because commodity markets are so easily corrupted, is the reason why we think we have to get a broader base. But we're realists, and we know that we are going to depend on commodity trade for a long time. We know that the reality is cycles in all the commodities. And as part of the overall strategy, of course, we're trying to get on to value adding, product development, niche marketing, to get more value from those very basic commodities that we produce so well.
Mr Kerrin says the manufacturing sector also needs a boost, but that won't be at the expense of Australia's traditional export earners. He says they'll still move in cycles, and if value-adding practices come into effect, they won't have such an impact if prices are depressed. And in a report just to hand, a 45-year-old man from the Horsham-Warwick-Nabil area has been killed in a car accident at Maryborough less than an hour ago. At this stage, there are no other details, and the driver's name has not been released. His death takes the Victorian Easter Road toll to 6. The city of Hamilton stepped back in time today as the wool capital of the world got its bicentennial celebrations on the road. Departing from the almost completed Big Wool Bales tourist complex, the start of a 15-day wool haul went off without a hitch.
Almost everyone was there, most of the residents of Hamilton and, of course, the star attractions. Bonnie, Duke, Bluey, Socks and the rest of the impressive Clydesdale team, all set to take off on the first leg of their bicentennial Pioneer Wool Haul. The Teamsters' backup crew and wool wagon will travel a large part of the Western District, renowned for the quality and quantity of wool, before returning to the wool capital of the world with messages of goodwill from municipalities along the way. This is the third and most ambitious wool haul organised by the Hamilton Pastoral Museum in 15 years. Organisers say modern high-speed movement of wool and constant pressures on the driver allow little time to enjoy the beauty of the Australian countryside. This is what they say celebrating our bicentenary is all about. The horses have spent months preparing for the trip, which will take them to 13 towns and cities. Sections of the harness itself are over 60 years old and need to be oiled regularly to keep it as good as the day it was made. Organisers have issued an open invitation to join in the celebrations at a barbecue and bush dance with the Teamsters during the week.
And briefly in other news, National Farmers Federation leader Ian McLaughlin will speak to Hamilton District farmers at a dinner tomorrow night. The local branch of the Victorian Farmers Federation has organised the visit and believes Mr McLaughlin will have some interesting points to make. Ireland's ambassador to Australia, Jim Sharkey, will be in the Warrnambool region tomorrow, and during his visit, Mr Sharkey will naturally call on the Killarney, Port Fairy and Koroit areas. He'll be accompanied by the member for Warrnambool, John McGrath. A gardener in Stawell dug up more than the everyday weed in his garden this morning when he unearthed a live Japanese World War II hand grenade. Army experts from Melbourne were immediately flown to the town and police secured the area. Personnel carefully removed it to the local quarry and exploded it. And for tonight, well, we've already had a preview of the Stawell gifting, but a big day of sport really in the area today.
Yes, and it was the first round of the Ballarat Football League, the second half, of course, of the split round at Easter. I'll have that story after this break in News Centre 6. Good evening. The second commemorative cricket match was played at Harrow near the South Australian border today. The Aboriginal 11 batted first and made an impressive 7 for 217. The Shire of Cowrie President's 11 struggled to make runs and were all out for 135. Ballarat's Dominic Murphy is Western Victoria's strongest performer at the national swimming titles at Brisbane's Chandler Pool. Dominic will be the only Victorian in tonight's 200-metre 14 years freestyle final, beating the title holder Stuart Lakey for the berth. Dominic's twin brother Julian won his 100-metre breaststroke heat but failed to make the final. Warwick Nabil's new racecourse attracted over 3,500 for its Easter race meeting. It was the first meeting held on the new track, which has cost over $100,000.
The Warwick Nabil Racing Club's history covers over 100 years. A new page in its history was written at the weekend with record crowds of over 3,500 people turning out to make the most of the warm autumn conditions. It was the first meeting on the new track that has taken 6 months and over $100,000 to complete. Officials, trainers and jockeys were delighted with the surface, which was rated as good even after last week's wet conditions. The main race, the Back to Beulah Centenary Cup, was won by Narcolan, trained by Tommy Torpy in Bendigo. And celebrating its 21st anniversary in Warwick Nabil today is the annual Easter Festival featuring the famous tractor pull. 50 tractors dating back to 1920 through to 1956 took part in various sections, including rubber tyre and steel wheel events. Warwick Nabil wheat farmer Robin McCulloch won the open rubber tyre section with his Super WD McCormick tractor. Other events at the festival included shearing demonstrations, arts and crafts displays and a show of vintage cars and steam engines.
The Ballarat Football League kicked off the season with a split round, with strong wins to North Ballarat, Maryborough and Ballarat on Saturday, and 2 games today at the City and Eastern Ovals. At the City Oval, Sebastopol proved too strong for Redan.